Hello everyone, please do excuse me if the following open letter does come across as slightly robotic. I just felt that the message was far too important to rely too heavily on my shoddy memory and takes and retakes where I'd have to stitch the video together. So this is a one shot, one take, one chance kind of video. It may be a little bit rough around the edges, it may look unedited and kind of raw and unprofessional to some extent. Please bear with me with that, but I felt that writing this open letter presented my argument in a coherent, decisive manner in the hopes that it will reach the individual that it is directed at. So here goes. Please also bear with me, I'm not the best at the continuation of speech. I do fumble and stumble over my words, but I will try not to make too many mispronunciations on this occasion. So here it goes. Dear Boris Johnson, I watched your children's climate conference on Monday in its entirety, so I would like to believe that I have not misconstrued your comments or understood them out of the context that they were made. But frankly, Prime Minister, I would rather hope that by Monday's COP26 summit, which you remark is the most important summit of our lifetime, that you present yourself as the educated, articulated individual that any public figure can be. The Children's Climate Conference was the absolute perfect opportunity to hear from those that essentially should be heard regarding the climate crisis, the next generation. As much as action and change is required now, what may be achieved to counteract the consequences of our selfishness, greed and ignorance to the problem will inevitably still affect those children and their children's children. It was not the place for infuriatingly half-informed throwaway statements or flippancy, especially not in the presence of Tanya Steele, Chief Executive of WWF UK, who outshone your presence at every turn. Even less so in the presence of children in person and virtually aged between 8 and 12 years old that displayed more passion, fury and innovation towards the environmental cause than you did. Learning from their example would set you in good stead for the challenges that you will indeed face next week. I cannot begin to fathom how difficult next week will be for you. Encouraging leaders and dignitaries from almost 200 nations to commit to the drastic measures that will be required is an unenviable task, especially if attendees are resistant to change or resentful of the fact that the leader of one of the biggest culprits will be unlikely to attend at all. But I implore you, please leave the offhand remarks far away from Glasgow, preferably at 10 Downing Street until at least November the 13th. Because if this Monday was anything to go by, then there's a possibility that you will not succeed to gain the commitments at the levels which are so necessary for our planet. Your comments were irresponsible and at odds with the current targets and actions of your administration. I honestly believe that you would like to have a green legacy as the head of our parliamentary system. It is your government's response to the climate emergency that I would most like you to be remembered for, regardless of the missteps or gaffes that have occurred or may still occur whilst you lead our nation forward. It is your job as Prime Minister to help, nay ensure that practices and procedures are implemented which are better and far more sustainable, which filtrate through our society, its government, its organisations, its businesses and to its everyday people. I don't think that you are entirely wrong with your argument. I am not naive enough to believe wholeheartedly that recycling is the answer. The process alone cannot reverse the crisis and, as you rightly said, doesn't begin to address the problem. However, to class the process as a red herring and imply that the process is not a viable option at all is frankly ridiculous. Recycling is not a pure solution, but it does serve as a step away from the linear lifestyle that we have all grown accustomed to, offering convenience and affordable price for a majority in a consumer-fed existence. It is correct to say that this alone is not enough, but incorrect to say that it is no good at all. Tanya Steele admitted that they believe the UK and the world should recycle and have the adequate systems in place to do so. It's also difficult to argue that it is a huge mistake to think we can recycle our way out of the problem when the UK does not have an efficient recycling processing system with excellent statistics, not even when items are sorted for the administration's convenience. The UK is still answerable in spite of the fact that the geography of our waste is changed. Exported waste cannot and should not be hidden. It should not happen, full stop. Mr. Johnson, if by chance you come across this letter, I'd like you to know that the population of the UK is trying to implement positive change within their daily lives. Recycling is a ground level response. It is how the general public help. Would you take kindly to being told that your efforts are fruitless? I wish you would understand that choosing sustainability is not always the simplest, most convenient or cheapest option. More now than possibly in the future, it is a choice that people choose freely. Every small step towards sustainability and accountability for our own waste and what happens to it after we finish with it is good. However, in no uncertain terms should those efforts detract away from the fact that we can all do more, a lot more. And I promise to continue making informed choices on my journey towards sustainability, even if such changes inconvenience me. I am in total agreement that we need to stop production of single-use disposable products, turning off the tap, so to speak. But ignoring the benefits of processes that use the waste from one method as the raw material for the next process is really silly. How do you hope to rid us of the mountain of plastic and refuse that we already have and already exists? What would you say to those in developing countries that collect plastic for their very, very poorly paid, if at all, job? Because yes, they deserve better than the environmental card developing countries and smaller nations have been dealt. What about infinitely recyclable materials? Should we ultimately disregard these as an option just because you consider recycling to be a non-starter? I would like to say kudos for calling out Coca-Cola though, because that just needed to be said. It's clear that you do hold some urgency for the climate change emergency and have accepted the UK is heavily responsible for the trajectory we have found ourselves upon. Our industrial revolution does make us historically inherently accountable, but to believe that our accountability is depleting as time passes by is false. Any idea that the UK is a forerunner in the environmental movement is somewhat ignorant, because we can all do more. Yes, UK reliance on coal has decreased massively over the past century, but our demand needs for fossil fuels in general has not. You stated on Monday that the UK wants to support net zero practices, that we were one of the first countries to legislate net zero practices. To work towards the 2050 net zero target. So why would discussions regarding new offshore oil, such as the proposed Cambo in the North Atlantic oil field, be given any weight at all? Never mind the potential for this to be given the green light to be opened as early as 2022. Who knows whether fracking will rear its ugly head in response to the looming energy crisis, despite being stopped since 2020. I'm not entirely convinced that the UK government would about turn on its net zero targets without some involvement from you as the most powerful person in the parliamentary system. Don't get me wrong, your remarks held some weight in the Children's Climate Conference and you were not entirely wrong in your conclusions, but please remember that the conversation deserves better than your tea-cosy explanation, more accuracy than a gazillion trees, or confirming that microplastics is the correct terminology. And perhaps jokes should be off the table too. Yogurt and seaweed all round, feeding humans to animals, working on reusable toothpaste later, not exactly funny, dude. The discussion is worth more than smirks and gags. I don't even think the children found it amusing. The fact that you took the time to listen to every child within the room was the redeeming feature. At least you respect them enough to appreciate their opinions and ideas on their futures. You have the basis of a more sustainable future. I just hope that you show the tenacity and resolve to see it through. P.S. By the way, I love the fact that you knew that a third of the world's emperor penguin population is in British territory. I only hope that it drives you to throw support behind the 30-30 campaign, 30% of oceans protected by 2030. To anyone else watching this, firstly, reuse, repurpose, repair items that you already have to drive us forward towards a circular existence, a circular consumption society. Our home needs us to do this. Turn off the tap on single-use products. Just don't buy them at all. Boycott them. Don't buy them at all. Force change on wasteful industries. Secondly, please do not give up on recycling. Please do not take Boris Johnson's comments to heart in their entirety. Your efforts are not wasted because Anything that does not go directly to landfill or end up in our wider ecosystem, particularly our waterways, is a step in the right direction and is a method of moving towards sustainability. Ultimately, recycling prevents any of this happening, any of those things going where they shouldn't. So please, please, please continue to recycle, sort your waste, do your best with your plastics, avoid single-use plastics at all costs if you can, boycott industries that rely heavily on them, don't buy their products anymore, force change on them. I really hope this video has come across okay. I'm very sorry if it was a bit bumbly, I did really try. Boris Johnson, I'm not particularly happy with you at the moment, but you have a chance next week to redeem yourself. I will be watching. Bye everyone.